Lumumba movie review. So this is a biopic movie. It's a biopic about Patrice Lumumba. So if you don't know who Patrice Lumumba is, I suppose I should give some brief background on that. And I'll try and keep this very brief because I'm not an expert. But just in broad outlines, he was one of the independence leaders of the Congo. So the Congo was a Belgian colony, right? It was controlled by Belgium. And then Patrice Lumumba helped bring it to independence. And then he became, I think, the first prime minister of the country. And then shortly after the country became independent, there was some sort of crisis with secessionists which were being funded by the Belgian government, because Belgium hadn't completely given up on the Congo yet. Again, I'm not an expert. There was eventually some sort of coup, and Lumumba was assassinated. Lumumba was assassinated in a coup that had Belgium's support, and the CIA was involved in it somehow. The American government and the CIA. I'm a leftist, so, take my opinion with a grain of salt. I'm biased. But my understanding of just kind of reading what I've read is that it is completely uncontroversial to say the CIA was involved in this somehow. We've got kind of declassified documents that the CIA wanted him dead and was taking an active interest in events. Exactly what the exact nature of the CIA involvement in this was, like what the CIA did specifically, I think is still a little bit controversial and murky. But anyways, American government and our CIA was somehow involved in the assassination of Lumumba. So that's the background to this figure. Now, talking about this movie is a biopic. I'm a history nerd, so I love biopics. And I know they're problematic, but I like the cradle to the grave biopics. I say problematic. Actually, problematic is maybe the wrong word, but they're difficult to do because there's no way you can scrunch a person's whole life into 2 hours and do it any justice. Which is, I think, why recently maybe the trend has been away from cradle to grave biopics and focusing on more individual events. But even though I know it's impossible to do, I kind of like these movies anyways, or kind of like to try and see the attempt. But yeah, this movie is biting off a lot because they're telling the life of Lumumba, but they're also trying to tell the story of Belgium's independence and kind of the complicated internal and international politics that were happening at the time. I'm given to understand that there is a director's cut of this movie which is over 3 hours long, which I'd be interested in seeing, but the version at my video store was just the standard 115-minute version. So that's the version I'm reviewing here. Yeah, it's packing a lot in, and I won't lie, I was a little bit confused at parts, just because there were so many different things going on and kind of the different factions in Congo politics. But I think the purpose of a movie is not to educate you thoroughly. That's what books are for. A biopic is just kind of there to give you some visuals, to excite your interest, to encourage you to go off and read about it more, ideally. So, yeah, judged from that perspective, I'd say this is really good. In fact, I'd say this is one of the best biopics I've ever seen. Right up there with Gandhi, right up there with Malcolm X. It's just a very powerful movie. The cinematography is great, and although I wish it had been longer, movie did a great job of summarizing the independence of Congo and the life of Patrice Lumumba, and touches on the role of the CIA in his assassination. The actor who portrays Lumumba does a great job. In this role, he has to give a lot of dramatic speeches, and he gives great dramatic speeches, the actor. And if you go through and look at the archival footage, search this on YouTube or something, of the real Patrice Lumumba, then you can appreciate that the actor that they got to play him looks exactly like the archival footage of him. So excellent casting. Unfortunately, the movie, or at least the version I saw, never really gets into Lumumba's childhood. So it's not really a cradle to the grave biopic. It starts off when Lumumba is 30 years old. But actually, now that I think about it, maybe that's just as well. Childhood is always the most boring part of any kind of great figure's life. I don't know. But whatever, the events surrounding the last days of Lumumba's life are very well done, and you get a somewhat detailed picture of what's going on here. Now, Roger Ebert, the famous film critic, I forgot to mention, this is an international film. This was not an American-made film. I think according to Wikipedia, this was a combination of several different countries. So French and Belgium and German and Haitian production or something like that. Spoken in foreign languages with subtitles and stuff like that. But this movie did get released in the US. I think it was broadcast on HBO at one point, or is still being broadcast on HBO. So anyways, film critic Roger Ebert gave this film an excellent review, and I'd just like to quote a little bit from Roger Ebert's review. Roger Ebert says, after having watched this movie, "Why does the United States so often back the reactionary side in international disputes? Why do we fight against liberation movements and in favor of puppets who make things comfy for multinational corporations? Having built a great democracy, why are we fearful of democracy elsewhere?" Such thoughts occurred as I watched Lumumba, the story of how the United States conspired to bring about the death of the Congo's democratically elected Patrice Lumumba, and to sponsor in his place Joseph Mobutu, a dictator, murderer, and thief who continued for nearly 4 decades to enjoy American sponsorship. Pondering the histories of the Congo and other troubled lands of recent decades, we're tempted to wonder if the world might not better reflect our ideals if we had not intervened in those countries. American foreign policy has consistently reflected not American ideals, but American investment interests. That's Roger Ebert's quote, but I'd agree with that completely myself.